Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is a morning update. So Prince Andrew, aka the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, and Ghislaine Maxwell have been friends for quite some time. And Prince Andrew played a huge role in getting Ghislaine Maxwell accepted into so-called polite society in New York. Now, this is something we've heard from several of the survivors. We've heard this from other sources, and now it's coming out in the publications today that this was, in fact, the case. There's an article out from The Independent today, and they go into a bit of the details about how Prince Andrew acted as the conduit for Ghislaine Maxwell to be accepted into polite society. We already know that the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family is being credibly accused by Virginia Roberts. We already know that he was one of the biggest enablers of Jeffrey Epstein and some of the biggest coattails that were ridden by Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Now it comes to light that he was also the conduit for Ghislaine Maxwell and her ascension into so-called polite society in New York. Prince Andrew, aka the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, is not just a witness in this case, in my opinion, folks, but he is also a target. I've been saying that for quite some time, and I think a man that has played the role that the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family has played within Jeffrey Epstein's atmosphere, within Jeffrey Epstein's ladder of friendship, well, I think that that is a man who has a lot to answer for. And especially considering this is a so-called man who went on TV and said he's willing to work with whatever authorities are working on the case. Well, he's had his chance, and he decided to not do the honorable thing and hide behind mummy's skirts instead. You know, it's like we always talk about here on the podcast. There's levels to this shit, right? There are the enablers. There are the people that were actually helping the trafficking ring keep itself moving and keep it all on pace. There are the bankers who enabled this. There are just the complicit, famous rich people who Jeffrey Epstein clung to so that he could get some more pull or, look like he is more welcomed. And then there are people who have been directly implicated in abusing these girls. And unfortunately for the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, he fits all of the bills for scumbaggery when it comes to relationships with Jeffrey Epstein. This article we're going to talk about today gives us a little bit of a look inside of how Prince Andrew facilitated Ghislaine Maxwell and her rise to so-called socialite. This article is from The Independent. The author is Clea Scopolitti. Headline: Prince Andrew's stamp of approval legitimized Ghislaine Maxwell in New York, writer says. And look, there's no doubt that when Ghislaine Maxwell first came to America, that she needed a foot in the door, right? Someone to open the door for her so she could walk her bipedal serpent ass through it. And we know that she was set up with contacts from her handlers, obviously, right? And I am thinking, and it is my opinion, that her and Jeffrey Epstein, this wasn't some sort of chance meeting either. I think that they were paired up. I think that this was all part of the larger plan. And I think that Prince Andrew played a huge part to get this to occur. A writer who claims she was in Ghislaine Maxwell's Little Black Book has revealed how Prince Andrew's stamp of approval helped the disgraced socialite, co-conspirator, child molester, all-around scuzzbag, to hustle her way into New York's most elite circles. And we've already established here on the podcast and obviously elsewhere that it does not take much to be invited into these so-called elite circles. If you are somebody who has some money, if you are somebody that people think that you could help advance their life or their career somehow, then you will be welcomed with opened arms. even if you've been convicted of abusing children. Because not only did they allow Epstein into so-called polite society from the jump, even after he was arrested and convicted, he was still cavorting with some of the most high-profile people in the whole entire world. And don't even get me started on Ghislaine Maxwell, who was still being invited to Jeffrey Bezos' nonsensical so-called camp retreats all the way up until 2018. So these people who are in this so-called polite society, they don't care if you abuse kids. They don't care if you're just an all-around scumbag. All they care is about the consolidation of power. If you can help them get to the next level, then you are okay with them. Writing in the Telegraph, Helen Kerwin Taylor says she made it into the contacts book Miss Maxwell curated for Jeffrey Epstein, the infamous pedophile, after catching the socialite's attention while working as an assistant producer at 60 Minutes, a role that granted her access to presidents and prime ministers. Now, the author of this original article was Helen Kerwin Taylor, and this article appears in its entirety in the Telegraph, but it's behind a paywall, and I most certainly am not giving them 1 red cent. So, Miss Helen Kerwin Taylor says that she was cultivated and curated and brought into Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's fold because she had access from her role as a producer at 60 Minutes to presidents and prime ministers. So you could see why Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell would try and become friends with somebody like this, right? When you know the overall picture, when you know how these two moved and how they operated, it would make sense for them to have as many newsmen or newswomen on their payroll or in their pocket as possible. Because when you get to those levels of power, it is not about finances anymore even. It is all about information. Information rules the day. Whoever has the most information ends up with the most money, and whoever ends up with the most money ends up with the most power. And that is the tonic to these people. All they care about is consolidation of power and moving along their own narratives. Miss Kerwin Taylor appeared on the list including Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Naomi Campbell, and Tony Blair. She claims that, back in the days when that was acceptable, she had the honor of 2 connections as Miss Maxwell was also friendly with her father-in-law. So, again, I'm not too familiar with the original author of this article, Helen Kerwin Taylor, and I'm not too sure how close she was to Ghislaine Maxwell as far as personal friendships or whatever, but it seems to me like she's trying to get out in front of something here, huh? Writing this article, she was in the Black Book, so it's good to see that some of these people that are in this book are coming forward with at least some sort of excuse, because ignoring it like it doesn't exist, well, that's not going to work. There's going to be questions, and those questions are going to come fast and furious if you're not forthright. So it's interesting to see Miss Taylor here jump out and write this article and try and basically distance herself from Ghislaine Maxwell and from the fact that she was in this Black Book. Miss Maxwell, 58, is awaiting trial on charges of conspiring with Epstein, her former boyfriend, to sexually abuse multiple minor girls. She denies the charges. So hold on a minute. Charges of conspiracy, huh? Well, where are the RICO charges? Can we get that superseded indictment, please, Allison Moe? Can we get that beautiful word RICO added to the charges, please? That 4-letter word that everybody fears who is involved in these sort of crimes. Can we please stop messing around? Can we please hit them all with RICO, every last one of them, from Les Wexner on down? Please, can we do that? After Miss Maxwell's empire collapsed, after her father's mysterious death, Miss Maxwell managed to successfully reinvent herself as a New York socialite. And we know that that's the case, right? She came over here from England after her scuzzy-ass pops died, suicided or not, whatever you want to believe. And all of a sudden, she shows up in America with a broken home, hardly any money, and she is automatically accepted into these social circles. She's automatically accepted into so-called polite society. It didn't happen on its own. It's because of her contacts. It's because she was such good friends with people like the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family. Miss Kerwin Taylor, who is now based in Notting Hill but comes from New York, writes that she was aided by her British accent and a faint whiff of poshness, as well as Prince Andrew's crucial stamp of approval. And again, this goes back to Prince Andrew, aka the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, playing a much bigger role than has ever been let on. Those of us who have been following this case understand how much of a role Andrew played. We know that Prince Andrew gave these people a huge amount of legitimacy. And we also know that ABC killed the Roebuck story because they were scared to lose access to the royal family. That shows you right there, in real time, right in front of your eyes, the tremendous power wielded by the monarchy. And when they think they're going to lose access to something like that, these parasites in the legacy media panic because they don't know how to be newsmen anymore or newswomen. All they know how to do is try and fire up whatever their base is, get them enraged, and have them hate their neighbors. They aren't here to inform anymore. They are here to propagandize. And that is what occurred, like usual. In an interview with the BBC that led to his retirement, the Duke of York, aka the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, said he met Miss Maxwell while she was a student in the UK. And there are conflicting reports about that. There are people who say that they met much earlier than that, and that Ghislaine Maxwell, due to who her father was, had access to the royal family for quite some time and is a lot closer to Andrew than even we know. So there are certainly credible sources that say that for sure. So remember, whenever we're talking about Andrew and Ghislaine Maxwell, we really don't know the true scope of the big picture. The Joe Exotic of the Windsor family has been accused of having sex with Virginia Roberts, a teenager who was allegedly trafficked by Epstein. He denies the allegations. Yeah, he denies those allegations, there's no doubt, but his excuses are BS. Pizza shop, no sweating, not me in the picture, fingers are too fat, all nonsense and not one bit of tangible evidence provided that proves your assertions. The writer, who has lived all over the world, describes Miss Maxwell as quick-witted, attention-seeking, and the complete darling of her set, adding that despite appearing socially with the it girls of the time, many of her own close friends were career-minded women who worked in the city. Yeah, so what does that mean? So because you're a career-minded woman, that means you can't be a scumbag? One thing that has been made very clear in the recent history of these sex trafficking rings, from Nexium to this one, is that women play a huge role in operations like this. There's, the whole, men are evil, that whole line doesn't run with me, okay? Men and women both are gray characters. We are all capable of good, and we are all capable of evil. It just depends on the circumstance and one's frame of mind. Miss Kerwin Taylor characterizes New York as having always been the breeding ground of upstarts and scammers, with its residents being more tolerant towards Europeans who fake aristocratic titles and family wealth, naming scammer Anna Sorokin as a recent example. And I wouldn't doubt that for a minute. Obviously, I'm not part of high society in New York. Folks like me certainly aren't invited to that party. But I could see how they could fall for the posh English accent, thinking that, this person comes from old money. They must be so much more refined than me. And we know that people in New York, especially people who live in the city and people who run around like the housewives of, the Real Housewives of New York City, we know that it's all about status with them. We know that it's all about jockeying safer position, and we know that they will bring anybody aboard, people in those sorts of circles that they believe can accelerate their own profile or their own career. While these appearances landed Miss Maxwell among some of the most well-connected people in Manhattan, Miss Kerwin Taylor underlines this social climbing didn't grant them access to New York's old money circles, who she says didn't give Epstein the time of day, as there were rumors from the start. And here comes the protecting, right? Oh, old New York money didn't give Jeffrey Epstein any love whatsoever. Yeah, okay, sure. The Rothschilds, etc., etc. Nobody gave him any love, huh? I hate these cover pieces by people like Miss Kerwin Taylor, who had some involvement with Jeffrey Epstein, and then they try and downplay his role or the access that he was granted amongst the most elite of the elite, and it just comes off bad for people like her. Miss Kerwin Taylor explains how newcomers to the city aiming to join exclusive circles use PRs and get their faces in tabloids and society magazines, but also need a rich husband or a patron to back them, which she found in Epstein. See, I disagree there. I don't believe that she found Epstein. I believe that this was an arranged quote-unquote marriage of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to further the plans and the plots of those who were handling them. Miss Maxwell is being held at Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn, New York, ahead of her trial. Epstein died in jail while awaiting trial last year. And folks, look, there is zero doubt that the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family played an intricate role in the Jeffrey Epstein sexual criminal enterprise. Now, if that is all going to be aired out in the future, that remains to be seen. They could easily set it up and just try and go after him as some sort of witness. But as I've stated several times here on the podcast, and as other folks have stated who are in the know, Prince Andrew, a.k.a. the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family, is not just a witness in this case. He is somebody that is of interest to them. They would like to speak to him about not only his role, but what he knew about Jeffrey Epstein's operation and what Jeffrey Epstein was doing. And we can see that that's what they're gunning for by the fact that they will not accept a written statement by the Joe Exotic of the Windsor family. They want to sit down and have a good old one-on-one with him. And up to this point, him and his legal team have smartly, in my opinion, denied. Because the second this boob sits down with a seasoned interrogator is the second that everything is really going to come off the tracks. If you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. All of the links that pertain to this episode can be found in the description box. All right, everybody, I'll be back later on and we'll do it all over again.